Rough Night in Hump Junction is the 15th episode of the 5th season of Two and a Half Men. This is directed by James Widdoes, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. In terms of being funny and entertaining, I don't think it's very strong, but in terms of character development for Charlie and insights into his emotions, it's pretty great. So depending on what you're looking for, it might be a brilliant episode, it might be a little average, but either way, I still enjoyed it. This one starts off with Charlie asking Alan to keep his date occupied so that he can go out and have an early morning date with somebody else and then can come back and spend time with the date who's currently in his bed. Needless to say, Alan is kind of perturbed by this, and Charlie then meets a woman on the beach and ends up going upstairs with her. But before he does that, somebody knocks on the door. Charlie answers and he gets punched in the face. This is obviously the husband of a wife Charlie has been sleeping with. And Alan talks with Berta. Berta had some pretty interesting things to say that I quite liked. And Charlie then comes downstairs in pain and he has a missing testicle. And that's not enough to stop him. We go to the bar. Not one of my favourite scenes, I have to say. The bar, for some reason, it just generally doesn't entertain me as a location. I think there might be one scene, I can't remember which episode, but I think this far into the show, I think there's been one time when we've had a scene set in this bar that I've enjoyed. Otherwise, I just don't really care for it. And I didn't think this one was very good either. Charlie's sitting on his inflatable donut, which I did like, and a woman sits next to him and he hits on her and he then ends up getting arrested. And honestly, I didn't care for it. I didn't think it worked very well. And then he's punched again. It's clearly an absolutely terrible day for Charlie, a terrible couple of days. What is going on? Well, we find out because he goes to see Dr. Freeman, who I absolutely love. And it turns out that Mia had recently announced her marriage, her upcoming marriage. And Charlie has a lot of grief about this, and he's using sex to run away from his feelings, which, to be fair, I feel like is not exclusive to Mia's marriage announcement. I feel like this is something that Charlie often does. I don't think this is a big secret, but at the same time, if anybody watching it can maybe relate to Charlie, there could be a bit of insight there. So for Charlie as a character, not that surprising, but it could be helpful to somebody. And Charlie, to his credit, sits with this information, and there's this beautifully executed moment where Alan goes into the kitchen and he opens the fridge door, and as he opens the fridge, Charlie makes a kind of whining noise. He's trying to cry, but it sounded like it was the squeak of the fridge door, and it was beautifully done. Very simple, very small thing, but I really liked it. And he got really emotional and then realised he didn't want to get emotional and stopped himself, and he's come up with a plan. He's going to get Mia back. And I couldn't remember how this played out. I've seen the episode before, a long, long time ago, so I wasn't sure what to expect. I don't think I expected what happened next, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. He goes to where the wedding is happening. Mia's getting married in an hour, and she agrees to talk with him for a minute. And despite his testicle pain, he kneels down and basically begs her to get back with him. And at that moment, her father comes in and she says, "You remember I told you about Charlie?" And upon hearing Charlie's name, her father punches him in the face. I've lost count how many times that is. Is that three? 3 times he's been punched? 4 times? It's a lot. And definitely, I like the fact that they're showing that, yes, this is a coping mechanism for Charlie to sleep around with a bunch of people, married people in particular, or indeed Mia, about to get married, he's trying to hit on her. And I like the fact that it's showing, yes, this is a coping mechanism, but also there are consequences to this. It's not a healthy coping mechanism. You might end up with a broken face. And the final few moments are actually really sweet. And not that funny, but they did try to bring the comedy up at the end. Charlie is in bed, defeated, alone, and he asks Alan to check on him to make sure he's still breathing. And Alan replies as he shuts off the light, "I always do," which was adorable and so sweet. And when Charlie's alone in the dark, he kind of whimpers Mia's name and gets really emotional just for a couple of seconds. It only lasts maybe 3 or 4 seconds. He rolls over and he hurts his testicles, and the comedy is brought back up again. And it was just, it's so unusual to see that level of vulnerability from Charlie. We do see it. It's not completely unheard of, but it doesn't happen that often. It doesn't happen for an entire episode. Whereas for the bulk of this episode, it's clear that he was really bothered by this, really affected by Mia's upcoming wedding. I have to say, I've mentioned this before, I'm not really a fan of Mia as a character. I feel like maybe at this point they're milking it. But one could argue that clearly Charlie must have real, genuine feelings for her, and that's part of his character development. Had we gone 5 seasons without Charlie ever developing a meaningful connection with another woman, or with any woman, then one could argue that his character is unrealistic, because it just seems a little bit too far-fetched that he would never, ever have any emotions on the surface. So I understand the role Mia plays in helping develop Charlie's character, but I think maybe they got a little bit more out of the character than I think they should have done. But nevertheless, Rough Night in Hump Junction is still a really strong episode, not the funniest, but definitely very thought-provoking, and ultimately an episode of 2.5 Men that I enjoyed.